And we are back with the show. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here for the PCC Multiverse. Thanks again for being a part of the show and part of the program. Well, it's been probably, I would say, one of the biggest weeks in a long time for the world of professional wrestling. A lot of things have gone on this week with competing companies. All Elite Wrestling, which had its debut show, AEW Dynamite, and also as well WWE, the World Wrestling Entertainment, with not only their season premiere on USA, but also as well their, I guess, developmental program known as the NXT. That actually came, their show on Wednesday nights, competing with All Elite Wrestling and AEW Dynamite. That also appeared this week and for their third week, I believe, this week on same time on Wednesday as well, if I can say that correctly. Plus, also, on top of all that for the wrestling world, you've got WWE Smackdown coming to Fox for for their return to broadcasting in many, many years. I mean the old days back, 15, 17 years ago when they were on UPN, when they were on different formats. Now they're back on Broadcast Network once again in a big gamble for Fox to see if WWE will pay off on their Friday nights. And here to talk to me about the biggest week in wrestling right now for 2019 and for the past recent years and also the foreseeable future are two awesome guys indeed. They're returning to the show. In fact, you got to check out their radio show at radio/memphis.com. That's radio-memphis.com, radio-memphis.com. It's their awesome show, the Heavyweight Chumps, and I'm here with Mattox Thundercookies right now. Guys, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you on once again.
Glad to be here.
Glad to be back. It's always fun when we get to come on and talk some wrestling with some people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not Deadwood the movie this time, although that was an awesome conversation. I'm so sorry they didn't get the Emmy this time around.
I was aggravated by that myself.
As am I. I thought it was a very good showing. I thought it was a very good movie, and if anybody gets a chance to check it out, they should indeed. But check out your program, the Heavyweight Chumps, if you look in the back listings, because the Heavyweight Chumps is available on virtually every podcast outlet. They can check out our conversation on Deadwood the movie as well. But getting back to this week in wrestling, it was, like I said, one of the biggest weeks in wrestling in a long, long time with all the stuff that was going on, the Raw season premiere, NXT versus AEW, WWE Smackdown coming this Friday as people are hearing this. So I want to ask you guys first off, obviously the key battle that everybody was talking about is, and I don't want to say it's not quite as hype. I don't feel that same magic as I once did back on Monday nights way back when, but they're calling it, quote unquote, the Wednesday Night War with NXT versus AEW Dynamite. So I want to ask you guys your thoughts on the shows initially. NXT has been running around for about a couple weeks now on USA. Got the jump on them, tried to do everything they can to persuade people to come in to watch their show. But with the ratings and how they came down, looks like AEW, for at least the foreseeable future, has at least the attention of the wrestling world.
It definitely looks that way, especially when you look at the, I think the early release numbers said 1.4 million for AEW last night or for Wednesday night, and 900,000 for NXT.
Roughly that. Yes, that's correct.
My complaint with the NXT getting the head start is quite simply, I think they were falsely advertising the first 2 weeks. They advertised that it was going to be a live 2 hours on USA, and what we got was a live first hour, and then you had to go over and watch the second hour on the WWE network, which for us at least caused a hell of a technical issue and crashed our network. So it took us a half an hour extra just to get the second hour to start. But I think after watching both of the products last night, AEW presents itself more like a wrestling program on television. What I grew up on with the old NWA and WCW Saturday night shows. Whereas I get still from NXT, not as much as you do from Raw or SmackDown, that NXT is an entertainment show that features wrestling.
That's a fair assessment. I know a lot of others are actually saying similar things when it comes to the reviews and things of that nature that I've seen online already. My difference for both shows, I mean, to me, it goes back and it harkens back somewhat to the Monday Night Wars. You flip the channels back and forth between what was going on between Monday Nitro and also as well WWE Raw at that point in time, going back and forth, deciding which show you wanted to go with, which storylines you wanted to follow, which matches were better and more interesting at each point in time. So I found myself going back and forth with each. I found both shows to be having some good points. I also found both shows to have some weak points as well that they need to shore up. But I want to hear from you guys first off, the positives from each of the shows that you guys saw last night. Maybe it was match-wise, maybe it's the way it was set up, or maybe it's something that really stuck out to you both.
The setups for the show, the matches and stuff they put their best foot forward. They put the top of the line out there. And I had read somewhere that AEW had left off Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy and all these others that were top talent also off the main show. But you got to look at what you're up against. And NXT, solid matches out of Adam Cole
and Riddle. That was a great match. I'm not a huge fan of Matt Riddle. His work impresses me. I don't like the gimmick.
And then the Shayna Baszler, Candice LeRae match was too short, in my opinion.
They're not letting anyone seem to be a threat to Baszler, and I think that's starting to get old in the eyes of the fans. For me, you look at AEW the way they set it up. First match out of the gate, first match on TNT in 18 years,
roughly.
And you get Cody Rhodes and Sammy Guevara. And I'm going to tell you, I think they had a fantastic match. And the one thing that I loved the most about that match was actually getting to see a finish that didn't involve someone actually having to hit their finisher. To see a match end with an old school move like a small cradle or small package inside cradle, fantastic for me, because I actually popped for that, because it's something you don't see on television anymore.
No, not at all. And it was very competitive, and I enjoyed it thoroughly as well.
I think the women's match, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to probably catch a little bit of flack for this, the women's match on AEW, I think, could have been better, and I think it could have been better had Nyla Rose not been in the match. And I think it's because it has nothing to do with Nyla Rose, and I know there's been a lot of people out there that have been saying that since she's transgender, she shouldn't have been in the match. I have no problem with that. The issue is she is not ready to be on television on a weekly basis.
She's sloppy.
And she showed that when she almost botched, or when she did botch that Liger powerbomb at the end of the match on the interviewer that was out there for Rio.
I get that sense as well. A lot of people are talking about that. And when you're in the bright lights, it could be attributed to nerves, but still, when it comes to millions of viewers watching, and at this point in time, like you said, it was 1.4, you cannot be making those type of mistakes. People see through those flaws and will turn off your product rather quickly. I want to get to you guys' thoughts on NXT for a second here, and a major surprise in a returning individual returning to the level of NXT. A great big surprise for me. Do you see it as a step down for him? And what happens when Finn Balor now goes to the NXT full time?
Well, okay. First off, there were two surprises last night.
There was also a returning individual as well, former
returning the return of Tommaso Ciampa and Finn Balor.
But one was actually on its way, because you could tell as soon as he made that workout video the morning of, and you saw that he was in somewhat decent shape coming back from surgery. Ciampa's return seemed to be inevitable, and what a better way to go ahead and highlight your show. But with Finn Balor, someone who has actually achieved world champion success, albeit for a brief amount of time before injuries set in. And it didn't seem like he was in the WWE's plans long-term after that for any stretch of time. It seems like it's a step down for him returning to NXT. I mean, that's just my opinion, and I might get heat for it as well, but I just think for him, it's not exactly the best thing for an outlook for his career at this point in time.
Well, they don't really have any big names to carry the NXT title right now. You got to put somebody down there that's
yeah, you're right, because other than Adam Cole, there's not a legitimate challenger to that championship. Right. As well as they've done in booking Matt Riddle, I don't see him as a legit number one yet.
And it's that big fish, small pond idea.
But what do you think? I actually pitched this idea to you yesterday when we talked. The possibility that not only is Balor going to be down there, because as you've seen lately on Raw, the OC, the team of Anderson and Gallows, have been losing again on Raw. What's the opportunity that they're going to come down, put them back with Balor? That way you have him with some backup against the likes of the Undisputed Era, with now Imperium that is showing up on NXT as well from NXT UK. So would it be wise to actually book a strong faction to come in? And I think personally, that's one thing I would look at doing, because I think honestly, Anderson and Gallows need a fresh start, and they've not been to NXT. And I think that would give them that fresh start, because they would be able to work with better talent, and better competition would bring out better for them.
Right. And also there's nobody to really go against the Undisputed Era. There's no other faction there. So it would make a lot of sense if Vince would do it.
Yeah.
Well, there is a lot of individuals right now in the WWE that could use a fresh change of pace, and NXT could provide that. Again, you guys are right on the money with Anderson and Gallows. Their short-term title reign, again, was not something that worked out long-term for them, and their association with AJ Styles hasn't really been to their benefit like it was before back in New Japan. So you got those situations right there, and it seems to be something that you're right that they're going to address, and you probably will be seeing more migrations. And for some, like the individuals that wrestle periodically on Main Event or some of the lower card individuals there, it could be an opportunity for them to advance. But with Finn Balor, who a lot of people see as someone who could still be a big part of their company, I think it's a little bit of a disappointment for him. But you're right, he could take advantage of it and take this time to actually rebirth his character in a way we haven't seen before.
Well, and on the other hand, as he just took a few months off to rest, with them only doing NXT once a week, they're not as wide of a traveling brand yet. So if he lives in the area of Full Sail, then it makes his life in the WWE a lot easier. And maybe the change in schedule would benefit a lot of competitors, where we've heard for years people have been saying they need to have an off season. Maybe sending them to NXT, where they don't have the rigors of that travel schedule, would give them a chance to refresh and actually get a break, but keep them, and especially now, keep them in the national spotlight of being on USA Network.
Right. And then you got the women's division. There's no
threat.
There's no threat to Shayna Baszler.
I mean, I know Rhea Ripley's probably going to be a threat. Rumor is that Toni Storm is probably coming to NXT. I hope that's accurate. I'd like to see Baszler and Toni one time. I think that'd be a fantastic match.
But do they bring down any of the women that they've put on the main roster, like Ember Moon?
I would not. I would even look at Ember Moon, but more so because they have made Baszler so unstoppable now. I would do kind of what ECW did when was it Mike Awesome was going to WCW, and they had to bring somebody in to take the belt off of him for the time being.
Right.
And I think I'd send Asuka back down for a brief bit, because God knows her career could use a spark.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, those are some great and interesting thoughts indeed. Once again, I'm talking to Mattox and Thundercookies from the Heavyweight Chumps. You got to check out their podcast each and every week. on every single major podcast outlet, and also catch them now with their own radio show on radiomemphis.com. That's radio-memphis.com. Mike, I'll tell you guys, it's just great to have you here. Great to have you talking about, what is essentially the biggest week in wrestling in many, many years. AEW, All Elite Wrestling, like we talked about, 1.4 million viewers. A lot of great things from it, a lot of great vibes, good reviews, decent matches along the way. They obviously built up some storylines, especially in that last match. I want to hear your thoughts on All Elite Wrestling, where it stands after AEW Dynamite's premiere showing. And, of course, with everything that's great now, you're obviously going to see over the next couple weeks a little bit more, but they shouldn't essentially be about the ratings now or whatever's coming next week and the next week. They need to go ahead and focus on the bigger picture and have AEW Dynamite be something that's special for them 6 months, a year, and beyond.
I agree. They need to focus on long-term storytelling and getting the fans acquainted with the talent that they have. I'm going to go ahead and say, in addition to Nyla Rose, I don't care if I ever see Brandon Cutler back on my television. His match on Dynamite Wednesday night was a complete waste of time, in my opinion. He blew, nearly falling off the top rope, even though they covered it with a knee injury. He just looked sloppy in the ring, and I don't think you can have that out there when you're trying to compete at such a high level. The big thing I think that helped stabilize the television program that the pay-per-views at this point have not had, I think having Tony Schiavone as the third member of the announce team really makes a more cohesive unit on the commentary table. And I think that's going to pay huge dividends for AEW, because they have essentially the two voices of professional wrestling for the past 30 years outside of Michael Cole. And let's face it, we all kind of wish he'd shut up.
Well, I want to ask you just that. That's one of the things that I found interesting, I shall say, for lack of a better term, with AEW Dynamite. And I felt a need for improvement. And you're right. Having Tony Schiavone there is great. He still sounds as sharp as ever. Still sounds like he could be that great general presentation host for a broader audience. If you want to talk specific holds, that was never his forte. But having him as a someone that can relate to a large audience, that's something that he can do and do very well. And of course, you have the greatest voice ever in wrestling, Jim Ross, right there. But I ask you, my friends, hearing him last night and hearing him over the past few years has been something that it's just his. I don't know whether it's the fact that maybe the industry has moved a little bit ahead of what he's able to go ahead and report, but it just seems like it's not what it once was with JR. And I don't know, is there something that maybe needs to be done on that end? Because it just didn't seem to click all the way for me in that 2 hours AEW Dynamite. And I think they might need something different to spice things up. Maybe not now, but sometime in the future in regards to their announcing.
I think JR got used to having somebody in his ear while he was at WWE.
It just sounds like it just sounds like his delivery and what's going on and his knowledge of the current product. It's just not there. And it's just not able to go ahead and translate that to an audience. I mean, he like I said, he is truly, over the course of his 20 years, plus years, and he'll tell you 30 whatnot, but there was a time 20 plus years that he was literally, without a doubt, the best voice in wrestling. But I'm not sure exactly that at this point.
It doesn't seem to me that he's doing the prep work he used to do.
No.
His pre-production used to be, you can hear stories from Lawler about the pre-production meetings that JR would have. They would have 3-hour pre-production meetings before even going in and doing a 2-hour broadcast. So maybe as he goes over this, and now that it's going to be a consistent weekly thing, instead of being, what were they doing, once a month there through the build up for like the last 6 months?
Yeah.
So maybe now that he's going to have a consistent timetable and be on television, he'll be able to develop a rapport with the people he's out there with, because, they had an interchangeable third member there on all three of the last events that I've watched before they started Dynamite. So the consistency of the same partners, and I think them working together, and I think Tony has the same knack for prep that JR does, and I think that's going to be a big help for them. But if you want to talk about somebody that was a voice of wrestling in a generation that sounded lost, why don't we look at how Jerry Lawler sounded on Raw?
Well, that's another story entirely. I can't say I blame you on that one. And yeah, how that how that announcer team, flows now that it's all different now that on WWE Raw, and they have their priorities differentiated now with all that's going on with Smackdown on Fox and all that. It's definitely going to be something to see. And I can't agree with you more. Sometimes we have to realize that time passes us by, and maybe we're not as good as we once was, and maybe it doesn't reflect well on television as a product. So I think both the WWE and AEW will have to make hard choices at some point in time. I'm not going to say now, but I'm saying at some point in time they will have to make hard choices on its product. But still, there's some great things to take out of with All Elite Wrestling. I like you said, the atmosphere, the way it was presented, to me, it was something that was very representative of TNT and what we saw before in the past with Nitro, and something that we definitely want to see going forward. Are they going to get 14,000 sold out buildings each and every week? No, they're not. But still, as long as you have a fervent fan base that I believe that AEW has, it's still great to see the enthusiasm's there. And it looks like right now the storylines going forward are going to keep people interested, at least in the foreseeable future. But again, it's all based on what's to come. One last thing to ask you guys before we head on out, and that is WWE Smackdown on Fox. Like I said, it's a return to the WWE 2 broadcast networks for the first time in a long time. So I ask you guys your thoughts on WWE Smackdown going to Fox, and is this a gamble for Fox that's going to pay off?
Well, I think he only did it just so he could fund his XFL, but that's neither here nor there. But I feel like it's going to pay off for Fox. They're really pushing for a top-notch show. I mean, they were fussing because they got Bischoff instead of Heyman when they did the new GM.
Oh, the executive producers,
producers. And they're going to get the talent that they want on that show, hands down. With that much money, yeah.
My honest opinion, they're going to hot shot the ratings the first couple of weeks, just like they are for the anniversary show. And then you have the draft that's going to make people, again,
and you have The Rock coming the first week.
Right. And it'll make them essentially brand exclusive, which I think you could just end that wild card rule and we're automatically back to brand exclusive without having to do this. But I apparently don't think on the same level as Vince McMahon. But I think they are going to hot shot the booking. They're going to have, with Lesnar in the main event of the first show, The Rock coming back to the SmackDown for the first time in 15 years or better. So I think it's going to be okay. I think long term though, don't be surprised if you see Fox shuffle SmackDown over to somewhere like FS1. Because I don't think it's going to pull the broadcast numbers they think it's going to.
Well, you're only going off of a 2 million rating for what it does now on cable television. And whether or not they're going to be able to translate that 2 million and bump up that number, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I know a lot of other people. I talked to people within the TV rating scene, including my friend Jessica Boggs from the TVRatingsGuide.com, that's kind of on the fence exactly where this is going to go for Fox. And you're right that they've already started other shows on the Fox Sports networks that they're already designing that Fox has asked for. So this could definitely be something that if it doesn't pan out on Fox for extended seasons, it could be something that you could see on FS1.
Or maybe eventually they move it to FS1 and maybe you get something similar to what Vince used to do with NBC, and maybe we would get something like a Saturday night's main event, and it would become more of a special feel on regular broadcast networks again.
Interesting point. That could be something that could work. Once again, the nostalgia of the Saturday night's main event. Hopefully, it will be shown at a better point of time. In fact, I was always kind of disappointed when they felt pro wrestling would only be good. NBC did at 11:30 at night, or basically on the last few times that they were run on Fox, which was at 10 p.m. I think. So they never really wanted to go ahead and put wrestling in a spotlight. Well, now they are. And so wrestling, the WWE and the wrestling industry as a whole cannot complain that they're not going to get a chance to go ahead and prosper because they're out in front. They're going to be on Fox Friday nights, right there, early time slot, prime time. And if they can't succeed at that, then I see the wrestling industry, like you said, going the way that you guys explained it as being only a one time in maybe several month type deal, maybe staying on Fox for that special feel, and then going to migrating to the cable networks with SmackDown, or even heading back to USA. Who knows from there. But guys, it's been great talking to you about AEW, NXT, WWE, all the stuff that's going on in what is considered to be the biggest week in wrestling in quite some time. But I gotta ask you, what's going on with the Heavyweight Chumps? Tell everybody about your brand new show on Radio Memphis and all the great stuff that's happening to your awesome show.
Well, we did debut the Heavyweight Chumps Radio Hour on radio-memphis.com. It will be on Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. Central Time every Tuesday. We'll run for 1 hour. That is in addition to the podcast, which will release on Thursdays. So what you're going to see on the podcast is we're going back to a long form interview where it's more of a sit down conversational piece with us and a subject. The pop culture news, things of that nature are going to be migrated more towards the radio show. Guys, if you're looking for us, the website has launched. It is madfatloud.com. And you can find us online at madfatloud.com. Find us on Twitter at madfatloud. That's also our handle for Instagram. And again, just remember to check us out on radio-memphis.com at 10 p.m. Central Time every Tuesday night. I think you're going to enjoy what you hear.
And if you miss it, we're on demand on Saturdays.
That's right. We will be in their on-demand catalog beginning on Saturdays.
That's, again, the Heavyweight Chumps. You can hear their radio hour on radio-memphis.com. Plus, also check out their awesome podcast each week. Well, whenever you want to hear it, on every podcast format. Again, that's the Heavyweight Chumps. And I'll tell you what, Mattox and Thundercookies, they do a great job on both shows. I got a chance to hear it. I was just so excited for them to hear their awesome show. Now that they're big radio stars, I just can't believe it myself. Guys, I'll get an autograph if I get the chance to see and meet you guys in person. I'm going to go ahead and get an autograph because you're now big radio stars.
Well, I mean, we were big before we started, but we're not exactly radio stars yet.
Oh, no. You guys are radio stars. You could, Howard Stern, kick him to the curb. Here comes the Heavyweight Chumps.
Hey, I'd just settle for like a tenth of his money. Yeah.
You and I both. Mattox and Thundercookies, they're the guys from the Heavyweight Chumps. It's always awesome to have you guys on the program. Just cannot thank you enough for taking the time to being part of the pop culture cosmos.
Thanks again, Gerald. I appreciate it.
Anytime.